Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis très content pour être ici avec Aurélien Broussard. Euh,
Bonjour tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup pour être avec Judo Training. C'est la première fois que je parle avec une Française, donc c'est bien parce que je crois que euh, vous avez beaucoup d'amis dans la France. C'est un très fort pays pour le judo, so, c'est très intéressant pour nous. Comment ça va?
It is indeed a big country, uh, especially for judo. I spent all my career working with judo players, not only, but not exclusively judoka. But I've been working all my career with judoka from different countries. Not only French,
Mhm.
even though now I'm back home, back in France and preparing the Olympics with half of the national team. But yeah, it's a special country for that.
Okay, yeah. Okay. First, I would like to introduce you because maybe I know you are very well known in the world of judo, but maybe some people don't know you, or maybe because of yeah, or maybe they know your
Yeah,
name but not about your.
potentially abroad, I'm not that famous.
But
Not at all.
it's not the football. This is not football, you know.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, Aurelien Broussard is one of the strength coach, very famous because he worked in the, I think he worked in Russia, also in Great Britain with the national team. Also, he was training some athletes in France for the French Federation. So I think it's also he has a lot of published a lot of books about conditioning in judo. So that's why we think that it's very interesting to interview him to know more about how is the conditioning in judo, how to develop the conditioning along the years. So this is the idea. So thank you for your for stay with us, and of course we can start. Okay.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so first I would like to ask you, do you think the condition in judo has changed a lot in the last years? Because maybe I remember many years ago that people is more focused, maybe sometimes in some methods about training that's more general, just running or bodybuilding, you know. And now we can see that the people just change, adapt the new methods for training. What do you think about how is the developing the conditioning in our
Well,
sport?
yeah, it did change. Absolutely, it did change. Well, I had a period. I remember a period of time where there was no conditioning whatsoever. It was all integrated. It was a kind of mix of specifics and then they started to implement some physical proper physical work, and now it gets to the point where we structure it more, and we can see that most of countries now they are trying really to fill the gaps through conditioning, because not everyone gets access to as many players or fighters as French, as Japanese, as Russians. So when you're in let's say a small judo country, because there is no such thing as a small country, but small judo countries in terms of people practicing, one way to catch up on speed is to do better on strength and conditioning. So those small countries got an interesting pace of training that push the big one to change. So that's the first change I can see. Another change is the global training system methodology of the world. I mean, every sport is exposed to YouTube, to Facebook, to social network, to internet, and so the knowledge is now spreading fast and strong. And so we've got this obviously influence of the North American style of training through UFC, through NBA, through anything you can follow easily online, and that goes straight into judo as well. And there are more and more people also interesting into strength and conditioning in judo, where before people were more focused on technique, on judo, pure judo.
Mhm.
And now there are more and more people that are willing to learn about strength and conditioning. And so it gets to a point where it grows. And the next time will be very interesting, because the next time will be, the next phase will be the specific training phase. And that is what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, and I would like to ask you because as I told you, as I told the audience before, you were working with different national teams, Russia and Great Britain, and also with some athletes in the French Federation. So I would like to ask you about the difference, about the conditioning when you start to work with these athletes. Did you find different styles or different methods that they apply? Of course, maybe when you started, you try to apply your own methods, but what do you think is the most important differences that you see in these different countries?
Yeah, the differences are huge, and so many differences we could discuss about. The first difference I want to mention is what I started to talk about earlier on, is the dimension of this training system. Because when you jump from France to Great Britain, and from Great Britain to Russia, and from Russia back to France, you get to move from a very big systemic country to a tiny performance system. Great Britain is a very small country in judo, yet quite performant.
Mm-hmm.
And back to a massive one with different culture, different training lifestyle, different potential in terms of players. So you are exposed to totally different systems. And the result is you get from one extreme to another, just like that. And it brings you back to a very simple thing, is that there is not one way to perform, because the three countries have been delivering international results, high standards at the Olympics. And yet they are not doing the same at all. So let's answer the question quite directly. In Great Britain, you have a kind of a commando. You've got a few players. There is maybe one or two players in each category who could deliver international results. Where in Russia, you've got more likely 5 or 6 that could be almost world champion. And in France, you've got maybe 2 or 3. So you don't rely on the same amount of people, so you don't get to train them the same way. In Great Britain, you need to find ways to fill the gaps, because you won't be able to go through just standard exposure in judo. In Russia, potentially you could just do judo, because the force will emerge from the numbers. So that's a first very important thing to consider, because people will not make the same decisions according to that when it comes to training. So that's very important. And after that, you've got all the training culture. For example, the Brits, they love numbers. They are rational people. They like to measure things. They like to test people. They like to rational things. They like to make sense out of everything they do. Russians, they're fighters. They are very talented judo players. They've got loads of them. They are run by someone who is very, very strong at what he does, who is Petio Gamba. I learned so much from him. And they consider the things more like collective sport. They like to go through a more general process, a more general approach, rather than individualization for every player, every category. Everyone goes through the same filter, and that is very important to them, to stick to that global approach, to keep the internal competition, to pull the top out of the numbers. where the Brits, they would really focus on individuals, make sense of every single choice, and try to get the best out of it. But that is connected to the original considerations of numbers, isn't it? Not only to culture. And France has been such a big country for years, and they are relying on that system of more of detection, and then just to bring the talent all the way through. So the way they're going to be training them is very consistent. It's basically the same filter for everyone since the very beginning. And again, a kind of numbers law where you bring all that people through all that processes, and then it gets you champions or not.
Interesting. And talking about the periodization, because you know that now in the international judo, the top athletes they need to perform well in many competitions, in world championship, just in the World Cups, European Cups, or Continental Cups, the Grand Slam. So they have a lot of important competition during the year, not like many years ago that they have
Yeah.
much less competition. So attending to these needs, what do you think is the best system to make the plan for a season? What do you think about?
Well, the best system is the one that delivers the most medals at the end.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's easy to answer that question. Today it's the Russians. That's very easy. But what I learned from Russia is real polarization. The true way of making things very intense when it gets to be intense, and things very, very low intensity and long sessions when you need to. And in between, not so much happens.
Mhm.
You probably went to sports science like me. You probably read a lot, follow courses online or everywhere in the world, and you learn about polarized training. You learn about, okay, we need to go very, very hard when we plan very, very hard, and very, very light when we plan recovery and all that. You, just like me, know that. And before I went to Russia, I saw anew. And when I really started in Russia, I realized, well, Ezio Gamba taught me what is really a polarized training. What is really training with 3 or 4 fights, really intense, long rest,
Mhm.
and that's it. Where in judo in France, it's 8 or 10 roundaries, all of them same intensity, fighting with random players, no plan. You just go through 8 or 10 roundaries. That's it, all year long, every day. And in Russia, they don't do that at all. They can do very long sessions with very, very low intensity, and they can do very, very short sessions with very, very high intensity. In the end, they master much more the volume of training, and not only that, the exposure to injury. And
Yeah.
what we can observe from these 2 Olympics where Russians killed everyone is that they never injured for the major event.
Mhm.
So it's a very interesting lesson that I brought back from Russia. And many countries don't realize that. And even listening to him, even listening to me saying that, they probably won't realize that either. They need to feel it. They need to try it. I spent most of my time in Russia thinking we are not training enough.
Yeah, yeah. I
Every
think
day waking up, we are not training enough.
yeah.
And
This is
yet I
I
win.
think this is one of the problem most common in many countries. Yeah, that sometimes when you don't have good results, they always think that we are not training enough, and maybe the problem is other problems that you are not training so well, or maybe you are failing in other aspects, not just in the volume or in the quantity of the training. So I think this
True.
is a big problem. Yeah, especially for example
True.
now that I'm working in China. Yeah, they are turning the volume is really high, but sometimes the intensity is not good enough. So I think this is a mistake because in judo, the important results you must do in a high intensity environment. So I think it's much better to train similar that you talked before. Yeah.
And there is a limit to that. However, very important is that I genuinely think you can't train everyone the same way, especially in judo where you've got, well, first men and women, and second, light categories, heavier categories, and training system is not fit for all that kind of people. And then you've got the styles of fighters, the styles of bodies, the styles of genetic style. You,
Mhm.
if you get a very explosive player, very efficient in the during the first minute, well, like Russians, for
Mhm.
example, uh, they're probably reacting much more to a very polarized system than Japanese or some North African countries where you get that people that are very endurant and can fight forever, but to a
Mhm.
more consistent pace. So I think one of the keys is to, well, to organize training in a more individual way. Or
Mhm.
I, I, I try to match both of my experiences. One way I've been with the temple of individual training, which was Great Britain, and on the other side, the temple of global training.
Mhm.
And one good.
Okay, sorry, we have a technical problem with the internet, but I think now is already well. So yeah, we are talking about the how to train different depends on the weight categories. I think this topic is interesting. Also, I read in one of your books about judo and conditioning because you talk that it's different type of judo. So why not to train in a different way? Yeah.
How do you read it, in Spanish or English?
Yeah, I think I read long time ago, but I think I don't remember. Maybe in Spanish. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah. To go back to that, yeah, definitely. I genuinely think that beyond individual differences, when when you consider judo for under 48 kilo fighters and over 100 for men, it's not the same sport.
Mhm.
Not the same sport. It's not the same considerations. It's not the same profiles. So you can't train them the same way. For example, I've got the personal conviction that uh, under 48 kilograms, maximum strength is not very much a problem. You
Mhm.
don't need to, apart from some exceptions or some players that really needs that. Most of players that are so fast and the pace is so high, and you know it's just a different type of training. And the time you will spend on maximum strength, you won't spend it on metabolic training, on speed, on reaction speed, uh,
Mhm.
on posture, on you have to make choices. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it is obvious that for 73 kilo players or 81, you need that minimum amount of strength to just to be up to speed. But it's not true for all sports. And if you consider for all categories, and if you consider the metabolic conditioning, the metabolic workout, it's the same. Why would you do so much metabolic with over 100 and over 78? Why would you do it the same way you would do it for a 66 kilo player?
Mhm.
They won't
Yeah.
be moving the same way. There won't be so much attacks. If you count it, that will be 10 times more attacks during a 66 kilo fight than 100. So obviously it's not the same pathway, it's not the same exercise, it's not the same sport. You need to take that on board.
Mhm. And talking about the strength, because I think it's maybe one of the capacities, that the physical capacities, that there are people, they usually are working with many mistakes. So what do you think about the way to, or what do you think is the most important things for top athletes, talking about the strength? Which aspects are more interesting?
One very common mistake I've experienced in every countries I've been working with. So bear in mind, I lived in Great Britain, I lived in Russia, I'm French, I worked for Switzerland, Finland, some African countries. I've been traveling a lot, and everywhere, people have been asking me, what is this player or this player top reference on bench press, on squat, sometimes on deadlift, all the time on bench press, all the times on squat, sometimes on deadlift, sometimes on pulls. And some coaches came to me with references of minimum under which you are not fit for judo. And that is just amazing to me, because I think you're fit for judo when you throw someone. That's the only benchmark you get.
That's true.
Pressing on the bench press is a very specific exercise to pressing on the bench with a bar, nothing more. So it can be one good exercise for some people. It can be. I'm not saying don't do bench press. Hear me well. However, you can't put this in the heart of your benchmarks for what is being a strong judo player. And the second observation I've had is, that is weird, because my strongest player in the gym is rarely the strongest on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the same consideration. That is because you're not looking at the right indicator. Possibly the best guy in bench press is not the best guy in the judo mat, because if he can push a lot, maybe you're not so sure he can pull a lot. And some of them, they can pull strong, but if they don't rely on very, very stable steps on the ground, then they don't transfer the strength.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to reassess the exercises you use and make them as specific as possible, and then connect them through the muscular chain, because in the end, you're gonna be generating strength from your toes to your fingers through your entire body to throw someone. That's what you're gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
And so bench press is very partially answering that, very, very partially. So for example, I do bench press with my players, but I don't do wide bench press, never. Obviously, we could lift more, but we lift more into a pushing direction that doesn't exist in judo. You do push like this in judo, you push like that. You don't push like that, ever.
Mm-hmm.
If you're tall, then you will push a little bit lower than medium range.
Mm-hmm.
So that for tall players, that would be more interesting, possibly, to do incline bench press. And for small ones, they probably will push up most of the time. So they will need more incline bench press. And all of them won't be grabbing the bar the same way, because they won't be all of them pushing the same direction. And when you use the tempos, when you use the blocking timings, maybe you will use an angle that is specific to the guy. So we need to observe how he fights. If you've got this, I'm small, I'm short, I'm explosive. Most of the time, I push very, very close to me and drop for serinage. That's how I used to do judo. So if you get me to push always like this, it's not fitted for me. I'm not a tall judo fighter. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that is just the local consideration. But then you need to put this all into music, into a global movement with kettlebell swings, with Olympic weightlifting, and obviously with judo, with throws. I've always worked with a gym surrounding the judo mat and trying to place the throw and the uchikomi into the heart of the training system in the gym. I think is one way to optimize your chance to bring the strength back on the mat.
Mhm. And also, I would like to ask you about the what do you think about the stability or instability? Because you know there are different theories that maybe it's a high risk when you work with because yeah, some instability movements with really heavy loads. So what is your idea about these kind of things?
Well, I come from a country where unstable training has been very, very popular.
Yeah.
In France and Italy, what we call proprioception, but this is global balance training. So you will jump on Bozu, Swiss ball, things like that. And some coaches been cocky enough to put loads of weight on top of that. So that is a big influence for me. And on the other side, I'm reading a lot of books in English, so most of them North American, and they hate that. Most of the authors, they will promote very, very stable training. So all the studies you will find out there will tell you that to increase max strength or max power, which is our ultimate goal, you will need to be stable as possible. I agree with that. I agree with that. But on the other hand, you need to get people able to step on the mat, which is not that stable, and with someone in front of you that is desperately trying to put you down and disbalance you. So that is also a very specific challenge for us. But the most disruptive thing on mat is not the mat itself. The most disruptive thing is your opponent, isn't it? He is the one that is unstable, not me, not the mat, not my feet. So most of my proprioceptive work now is more connected to what I carry, like a sandbag, like a water bag, rather than what I'm stepping on. So stepping on unstable surfaces is good for prehab, prevention, rehab. That is why I'm using all that, or pre-activation. But when you get to strengths and getting people really strong with heavy weights back on the floor or on the mat, which is specific, bare feet if possible, which is again specific, and this balance will more come from push or again water bags, elastic bands, stuff like that.
And about changing the topic about the endurance training, what do you think is the key factors for judo athletes?
Well, I think it changed a bit. It changed a bit, didn't it? Because we moved on to a 4 minutes fight, which is quite a big difference because prior to that, fights were a bit longer. And also with the new rules, you get to score full ippon a little less. I'm not saying that's a fact. I mean, if you look at the numbers, most of fights, they go to the end of the fight, don't they? But the end of the fight is shorter than what it was. So judo today is more a consistent 3 to 4 minutes fight with mate, where judo yesterday was sometimes 1 minute, many often 5 minutes, and a little bit more extreme on that. You know what I mean? So you get more of lactic capacity and aerobic power today than ever. You follow me? So I think it's very useful nowadays to train people through very hard intensity uh, through high intensity interval training, sometimes with quite a lot of aerobic into it. So short rest, 90%, or really proper anaerobic, 1 minute 30 to 3 minutes, all out circuit with full rest, 5 minutes, proper lactic system. And that will aim at most of the situation you're exposed into a competition judo fight. And that said, you get the fit for competition and you get the fit for training, which are not the same path on there. Because during training, we do randoris and we do one after the other. And in best case scenario, you get to rest the time of effort. You do one on, one off. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you just carry on one after the other. And that is pure aerobic, isn't it?
Mhm.
And if you don't go, if you're not fit for that, and you are just fit for competition, then you don't train enough during judo specific, and you're not fit for competition judo wise. So you need to be prepared for both situation, if you like, randori, training situations, and competition situations, which are much more lactic and high intensity. Does it make sense?
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And also, I would like to ask about the testing the performance, because before you told, for example, that some coaches always asking you about the which is the score that okay, about bench press, or maybe about the pull or snatch or clean or whatever exercise about strength. But which test do you think that they are more interested to check the physical capacities in judo? Because yeah, I think that the best test for a judo is a competition, but of course you can't control the environment in a real competition. Yeah. So what do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
think
true,
is the best
true.
way to
Right,
check the?
you're talking about strength. Let's consider the power in general, strength, speed, force, velocity. And I think um, there is no such thing as a standard exercise. Obviously, there's the big five that suits judo really well with all the Olympic lift. There's the hip thrust, all the global power exercises through kettlebells or barbells you can think of. But the most important thing for me is the force velocity profile. The question is, where is your power coming from? That is my main consideration in the gym. How do you build your power? And more importantly, how can I get you to improve now? Should I train you in strength, in pure power, or speed? And in what proportions? A technique I'm using now is to create a profile of the player, of the
Mhm.
fighter, force velocity, and then you get a clear picture on what he is able really to produce in terms of maximum strength, maximum power, maximum speed, and where his power is coming from. And then you can choose, it helps you to take the right decision. Should I be training him or her in strength or in speed, and in what proportions? That is the most important uh, fundamentals of rational in the decision of training, in individualization, if you like. And then I pick up the right exercises for the right people according to, like I said, their size, their categories, their style. I've made the choices before that of whether or not I'm going to train them in speed, in strength, in balance, power. If that makes sense.
Mhm. And also, I would like to ask you, because one of the maybe the problems in the judo training, that the technical coaches sometimes, yeah, don't have the help of any strength coach or professional that know all these things. So what is your advice about these coaches, how they can help their athletes uh, just to improve their conditioning?
Well, I'm a judo fighter myself, so I I know that we have in judo thousands of exercises that can help, and they master that. So in their way, they are more specific in strength and conditioning than many other coaches that don't do judo. I remember having discussions with fellow colleagues from other countries who are not judo fighters or not technical enough to understand their own sport, and they would tell you things that would be such a waste of time considering training. So, for example, they would tell you to be strong in judo, you need to be very, very strong of the upper body. That is the main thing. You need to control there very strong. No, you and I know that the strongest in kumikata is also the strongest in squats. He needs to be stable on the ground. He needs to use his legs, his feet, his hips, and then obviously, yes, he needs to be very strong on the upper body. That is obvious. But if you don't get that, you can't train them properly. And that is the mistake that a judo coach would not make. He would know how important the legs would be for the kumikata, and he would train them in this way always. So I would say don't be ashamed of or shy of using judo. I mean, we've been influenced by Olympic lift. We've been influenced so much by athletics. We are doing some random runs in the hurdles, you know, like football players, or so much squats and lift and all that. Come on, come on. The lifters, they don't do judo. Maybe
Yeah,
they
that's
should.
true.
Maybe they should. But and the football players, they or the runners in the athletics, they don't do judo. Maybe they should. And we've been influenced for whatever reasons too much from them. So bear in mind that the more integrate things are, the more lucky we can get on the mat transferring the effect of training.
Mhm.
That's what I think. So yeah, anything we can use to structure the training would help. So then it just comes to a decision when you're a coach, a judo coach, and you don't have strength and conditioning coach aside. Should I train all the time the same way? That is the fundamental question. Or can I actually manipulate the times of training, the themes of fights, the goals of each individuals to manipulate the intensity of the judo and the transference of the judo. What I observe when I travel is that people are training very consistently. They have their own recipe of judo. They do first 20 minutes of warm up, conditioning, blah, blah, then a bit of technique, and then always the same type of randori.
Mhm.
Why wouldn't you guys try things totally differently? Like do a proper fight for 1 minute, all out, see what happens, and then rest for 5 minutes. Oh, lactic training.
Yeah.
Oh, better than a CrossFit circuit all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
What if you tell someone, okay, now you don't fall. No matter what you do, you don't fall. And you, on the other end, you get him down, no matter what it takes. And that is for 3 minutes only. 3 minutes. And then you don't get 3 minutes off. You're going to get 5 minutes off because I know that it will take you to a very specific time of the fight, which is the late 3/4 minutes, and at the end of the fight, that is what you really want them to be good at, not CrossFit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say play with all all the indicators you get in hand because you've got loads.
Mhm. And the last question comes from our Instagram. and they are asking about how many. Is a difficult question because maybe we can talk a lot about this, but I'm sure that you can make a good response. Yeah? It's about how many days times per week and what types of conditioning is much better for high level judo athletes.
Yeah, yeah, I can make a question. I can make an easy answer. Well, the easy answer is it depends. I
Yeah,
won't
yeah,
say that. Yeah, I won't say that. No, no. Actually, it doesn't depend that much because I always say if you're training less than 5 times a week, don't waste time on in the gym. Don't waste time in the gym. If you're training less than 5 times a week, don't spend time in the gym.
hmm.
So basically, you're exposed to strength and conditioning when you really do elite performance. Except if you want to do it for any other reasons, because you like weights, because you like conditioning, because you like training, because you want to be fitter and don't want to do too much judo. That's another reason, and then that depends. But generally, don't waste time in the gym when you don't do 5 times judo a week, because 5 times judo a week is the minimum, I think, to connect to elite performance. And then when you reach that level of training, when you're junior, you can double that, but you won't be able to do that for long. Very quickly, you need to breath a little bit from judo because that is rough. You fall, you will fall. So you will need to recover. Your body will need to recover just from the bruises, just from the roughness of the sport. So you get your answer. When you train 5 times a week, you probably trains twice a day, but you can't do judo twice a day, can you? So you're gonna do judo and conditioning. So my answer is once you pass this 5 times a week, go straight to 9 and complete with minimum 4 strength and conditioning.
Hmm. Yeah, so good response.
Not consistent, depending on the volume and all that. Sometimes much more than that, sometimes much less. But in a standard week would be that.
Mhm. Okay, so thank you so much, Aurelian. It was a really great interview. I'm sure that our audience is going to enjoy this conversation. Many interesting things. I know it's too short to talk about all these topics, that maybe we can talk hours and hours, but I think it's enough to keep the coaches more interested in these topics and sure that they want to learn more about. So merci beaucoup, and I hope to see you again, maybe in judo training or in one of your conference. That I'm sure that is.
Yeah, maybe we get to talk again on this channel as well. If the audience wants to follow me, I'm very active on Instagram, Facebook. Excuse my French. Most of the time I speak French, but I know those translator, they do miracles nowadays. I've got 2 online courses, full English. So if you
Mm,
want to follow them, that's my pleasure. And I've got 3 books translate that are quite interesting for judo coaches that are translated into most of languages, and obviously English, Spanish, Italian, but
mm.
many others. So that's one about high intensity training, one about mobility, and one about judo conditioning. So if you Google my name, probably find those resources, and I hope they'll be helpful to you guys.
Okay, so thank you, and also yeah, also we will share this information in our website, so just they can check this information. We can put the link much easier for our audience. So thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Sweet, thank
Okay,
you. Thank you for the invitation. See you soon.
okay,
Bye.
okay, merci. Au revoir.